Hello, I'm Gina Fitt, and you've either surfed to or purposely selected Life Talk with Bern Moses. Welcome to our show. I'd like to encourage you to take a moment and get yourself paper and a pencil. We've had a lot of our viewers call in and tell us they got so involved in the show that they didn't want to pull themselves away, and they really wish they had a paper and pencil to take notes. Some of the information we're covering tonight is going to be extremely valuable to you. Also, we are going to be giving you a phone number later on in the show that you can use to call in and get an audio tape of the show and also some other materials that are available. Bern, last week on the show we were talking about ways to access the subconscious mind. And you said there were several pathways that we could take. A couple of those included affirmations and confirmations. Now, is there a difference between the two, and if so, exactly what is that?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I'd like to do a little reviewing and then get into the fact that we perhaps made a verbal faux pas last week. I think that I got caught up in one of your questions, which are always delightful, and don't stop, because I've had people tell me, you know, she's asking the question at the same moment I would have asked it.
Oh, really?
So it's really coming out well. I think a lot of the viewers need to understand that you have not attended, have not been a student, if you would, of any of our essays. And so you're hearing a lot of this for the first time.
Absolutely.
So your responses, your reactions and what have you are candid and valid and exciting. So
every show has been a discovery for me.
Yeah, good, good. I know I've noticed you taking some notes too, and I think that's appropriate.
Yes.
One of the things we talked about last week, and it doesn't hurt to review, is that we have essentially a magic genie at our disposal, and that's really the subconscious mind. It's powerful, and yet an ignorant, indolent entity that until we condition it appropriately, and we condition it by stroking it like we would in Aladdin's lamp. You remember that we had 3 ways of stroking the lamp, and 2 of them were inappropriate. In other words, if you do the natural things, chances are the genie is not going to be impacted, nor will he be effective, or she. And so it's a matter of getting conscious and stroking that lamp appropriately. Now, that's a metaphor we're speaking of. And what I'm saying is that the conscious mind has to be the stroker. And the subconscious mind essentially is the lamp that contains the genie. And so as we use our mind effectively and appropriately, we're going to get better results. Well, we know, too, that the results we're getting, whatever those results are a product of our thinking. Now, there are those who say that you and I are where we are because that's where we've chosen to be. I don't buy that altogether, because I think sometimes we may have gotten some faulty directions, an inappropriate roadmap, and so sometimes we find ourselves wondering why we are and where we are, and you know, not really understanding. And so
if I may, I heard a saying once that said, if you want to change some things in your life, you have to change some things in your life.
Good.
So basically what you're saying is we not only have to think differently, but we have to get correct information for thinking differently.
You know, that reminds me, something bubbles up into my mind. You've heard people say, and we all have dreams, we all have desires, wishes, things that we'd like to pursue.
Right.
And a lot of times people say, well, that's easier said than done. You've heard that?
Yes.
But the fact of the matter is it doesn't get done until it's said. Yes.
Yes.
And so that's part of what we're talking about this evening. In order to stroke the genie lamp effectively, we were talking about the fact that we do it verbally with words, or we can do it visually. Now, I don't know if I can squeeze all this in appropriately or not, but we're going to try.
Okay.
We talked about auto-conditioning. Auto-conditioning. I was first introduced to this concept in 1957. I read a book by Dr. Ben Sweetland. It was called I Can. And in there he talked about auto-conditioning and occasionally made reference to a term that has become very popular, and that is the idea of making affirmations. Affirmations. Now, an affirmation, we can say, at least for the sake of argument, is a first-party singular commentary that identifies the way we want things to be. It's an I can or an I will. If there is something out there that we really would like to have or to do or to be, but we're not at all certain we have the capacity, we're not sure, it's very appropriate to go to an I can. I can, because that at least begins to identify the possibility of something. You know what I mean? In other words, if we can just open the doors of our mind and begin to think in terms of, well, I could, I might, it's possible.
Instead of I can't.
Yeah.
It's not possible.
Boy, that really works against you. But an I can is a possibility. Once there is some momentum, once there's an elevated awareness about this, once you begin to identify your capacities and acknowledge your authority and begin to make some choices and decisions, exercise initiative, perhaps, then it becomes an I will. In other words, if I continue doing what I'm going to do, I will accomplish, have, or be that. Okay? And that's the probability. Probability. It's an exciting step, but it's a necessary one. Now, we can start our affirmations with I will if we're totally comfortable with the fact that we can. You understand what I'm saying? We don't have to go through all these, but you have to think about, where am I in relationship to this pursuit, this idea, this dream? I will.
What is your confidence level?
Exactly. Then you move on to possibly the I am. Because that's the moment of positiveness where you have achieved, or that you know that you have arrived as to what it is you wanted. This is an exciting spot, there's no question.
Now, do you have to have actually accomplished the particular goal before you can be an I am, or by thinking it so does it make it happen more quickly?
If it's specific, I think it's best to be there and to actually have accomplished it and then lay claim to it as though it's yours, and now there's an I am. There are those, as a matter of fact, a writer of a book I can, and I'm not going to delve into it or make a criticism out of it, but they wrote a book, I Can, and then a few years later, the same man wrote a book, I Will, and said, you don't need to do I Can. You know, and I was a little suspicious of that. And then later, guess what? He wrote a book, I Am, said that you don't need to do I Can, I Will. And I don't really buy that. I don't really buy that. Unless, like you say, you recognize a possibility, and that if you continue doing what you're doing, that you probably will, then perhaps you can start saying I am. But even at that, I think you're taking a risk. You can't lie to yourself too long without it short-circuiting. You know what I mean? In other words, I think you have to get into the truth of the matter. There is one thing that we can do to strengthen this. It's not a tool that I had years and years ago when I was using this technology, but it is something that I've come to believe is valid. And that is that since we are trichotomous in nature, you know, we've talked about this in the past, that we all are three-agendered. We have a subconscious mind, a conscious, and a conscience. And if we can harmonize those, then we can start thinking in terms of we and strengthen ourselves. There's safety in numbers, you know. And so I really believe that people can probably accelerate this process if they really said, we can. And whenever you say we, you check into your trichotomy. You check into the fact that there's three of you, that the conscience has to be honored, that the subconscious has to be comforted and assuaged, and that the conscious mind is really the master. That's the decider, the mover, the evaluator. And so we can, we will, and then of course that would become a we are, whatever that intention was. The intention has to be clear, has to be selected out of a whole list of intentions. Yes. The only way you can develop a valid affirmation is to write a long list of affirmations. That you have to kind of think about, what is it that I want to do, be, and have?
Really?
And make a long list, and then as you examine that list, you'll get back and you'll see one, perhaps, that's most important to you, or if that particular one is accomplished, it will satisfy a lot of the others. Follow what I'm saying?
Yes.
In 1957, I had just a few months before I was scheduled to get out of the service after 10 years in the Navy. I didn't want to get out of the service. I wanted to go into business. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to make a full-time career out of that because I had fallen in love with the system. And there was no rationale for that at all. In spite of the fact that I loved it, I was still 1,200th out of 1,500 managers internationally with Alcoa. And that didn't justify giving up retirement, medical benefits, salary, all this kind of thing. And I was introduced to this concept, and because of the need, the desire, I totally engrossed myself in the affirmation process. And at that time, out of my list, I chose that I can be the #1 field counselor in the United States. That doesn't mean anything to perhaps you or to our viewers, but to me that was a pretty major step. Because if I could accomplish that, boy, that would solve all my problems. I cannot tell you how many times I said I can be the #1 field counselor in the United States. Driving in the car out loud, in the shower, whenever I was alone, I'd say it out loud, keeping my mind focused on that. That is not easy. I'll tell you, the world rushes at you with all of its ideas that it has for you, and it tries to get in the way. And then, of course, the subconscious mind is going, no, we're okay. We don't need to do this. Stay in the military. And don't think I didn't have people supporting that idea, too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so you've got to be serious about this. There has to be an intensity about it in order for it to work. In other words, and I said I can. There was a point where I knew that I had gained the momentum, some of the skill, because I'll tell you what happened. I met #1, the leading field counselor in the United States, and as so often is the case, I wasn't that impressed. We have an illusion sometimes that the champions have halos or something. You know what I mean?
That they're immortal.
Yeah, and they don't. They're just folks who've learned how to work well, who are reasonably disciplined in their attitude and what have you. And so I met this guy, and I said, I will. Not only can I, but I will do this. Yeah. And then there was a day, in 90 days, I went from 1,200 to #1, able to say, I am #1 field counselor.
Oh, my goodness.
Now, that was all I had to work with, and yet it was incredibly fast. Granted, it was accelerated by desire, ambition, drive, intention. There was a real need for me. It was pretty exciting. You got to be careful about this, though. I then went to, hey, I can stop stuttering. So I've been stuttering since I was 6 years old. It was humiliating and embarrassing, and I think held me back a lot. And I started to say, I can stop stuttering. I can stop stuttering. And that wasn't working, so I went to, I will stop stuttering. I will stop stuttering. And it was frankly getting worse until one day I recognized, my heavens, what am I saying? I'm saying stuttering all day long. So we do have to be careful about the affirmations that we make, because if you remind the subconscious of the difficulty, it'll cling to it. And so I changed the phraseology to, I speak clearly and crisply without hesitation or impediment. And I could say that for some reason without stuttering on it. And I would say it out loud, very vividly in my mind when I was with someone, thinking almost sometimes they could hear me. You know what I mean? Have you ever thought thoughts? You think, oh, I better cool it, they can read it. Yeah, and then sometimes very subtly. I would be interrupted from time to time, and then when I get by myself, I was able to start again. I haven't always been able to do that. I've made subsequent affirmations where they were hard to cling to. They were hard to maintain.
What do you think makes the difference?
Oh, probably need, intensity. Like I say, I don't know. I really don't. Maybe the goal isn't as meaningful, as worthwhile as you. I think a lot of times we select things that are other people's idea of what we should be.
So there's not a motivation behind it, an emotional decision.
Yeah. I tell you what, though, there are tools. And I think this is probably as good a time as any to introduce a couple that really seem to help. One is the Blue Dot process. In other words, several years ago in Dallas, Texas, I encountered a therapist who was using these and assisting people with agoraphobia. Are you familiar with the malady?
Yes.
Where people's, the space gets bigger and more frightening. People have panic attacks. There were people who couldn't go over a bridge. Other people couldn't go on an escalator or an elevator. Some people couldn't fly for love nor money. And so he was working with them, and this is one of the tools that he used to assist in this area. Now, he was high on affirmations, believing, as we do, that you become what you think about to some degree. They say that, a man becomes what he thinks about all day long, and I don't agree with that altogether, because most men would be women if that was, But anyway, this helps because what you do, once you find your affirmation, something that really makes your heart sing and you know that you want, what you can do is to start making little commitments. You peel off a blue dot, and say, for example, you put this on your time management book. I got one on my pen. I'll put one on my pen. Okay. And I put one here, and I put one on the bathroom mirror, and I put one on the automobile, where the pedometer is, and maybe on the rear view mirror, on my time management book, on the telephone. And the idea is that every time I see a blue dot, I remember to start affirming again. not just once.
So it's just a little mental cue for
Yeah,
you.
yeah. So you, oh, I got to get serious here, because otherwise you get distracted and won't do it.
True.
Now, yeah, every time. Now, it's not that you make the affirmation just one time. When you see the dot, you go, oh, you know, I eat selectively and slowly and therefore sparingly. That's one of my more recent affirmations. It's not working. No, it is. I lost 90 pounds doing that here about 2 years ago.
Really?
And boy, I can't tell you how many times I said I eat selectively and very slowly.
So instead of
sparingly.
saying, I will lose weight, you...
Oh, right. You pick what will lose the weight. The process is what really stimulates it. Now, after a while, you stop seeing the blue dot. It's really kind of fascinating. You don't even see the blue dot. And so then I suggest you go around and put yellow ones on, or red ones, and then go back to blue ones. But use this as a stimulus to keep going.
Do you suggest that we memorize the affirmations then, or have them written down on a note card? Or?
Oh, it starts out written, but after a while, when you're saying it that often, well, you get it affixed in your mind.
How many affirmations can you reasonably...
Oh, you should do one.
Only one at a time?
You can have a list and review them, say, once a day, kind of read through, once a week or so, kind of keep focused. But there should be one that you're really, really focused on, and that one should be one, like I say, that will satisfy the most number of affirmations that are on the list. There's bound to be one.
And then you keep that affirmation as part of your daily ritual until you've accomplished it?
Right. Either that or just giving it up. I mean, there is that choice that we always have, isn't there?
Right.
We do have the choice. There is another way of assisting. It's the rubber band thing. Blue dots and rubber bands. Put that on if you would. What this is about, this is $1 billion business.
Rubber bands?
No, well, the concept. You're familiar with Schick?
Yeah.
You know, where they help you quit smoking and this kind of thing? As I understand it, you go there and they let you smoke. You know, they'll let you light up, but every time you take a drag, they zap you with a small electrical shock, okay? And that's aversion therapy, okay? And in other words, if the conscious mind wants to quit smoking, the fastest way to get the subconscious mind in line is to zap it over and over when it violates, okay? And now if the conscious mind, however, doesn't really want to smoke, if they're there because the wife wants them to smoke, for example, I don't care what happens, eventually the conscious mind will win, and that's very encouraging to know. See what I'm saying? In other words, whatever the conscious mind really wants, eventually it can have, because the exercise of the conscious mind toward any change is called an adjustment. And the subconscious mind, being basically an adaptive entity, will adapt to any adjustment we make.
To any adjustment.
Any adjustment.
Either up or down.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, boy, that's good news if you just get busy using your mind instead of letting it use you. Because that's exactly what happens. Knows if we're not serious about what we're about to do, our subconscious is real serious about keeping things the way they are. And that's the battle that we're fighting all the time. And so all I'm saying is that we are in command of the direction our life is taking so long as we're conscious, so long as we're using our mind appropriately. One of the ways to do that is through the blue dots and the rubber bands. Now the rubber band is for this. When, say for example, my affirmation was, I speak clearly and crisply without hesitation or impediment. And then all of a sudden I found myself saying to somebody, I'm a stutterer. Okay, and so what I do, I go, no.
Really?
I speak clearly and crisply without hesitation or impediment. In other words, you snap that thing. Now, what happens here?
So it's not when you actually stutter, but it's when you make a negative statement about yourself.
That. Right. It's a way of self-policing this, and it's called aversion therapy, and this is more effective than Schick because it's consciously induced. Now, the reason it works, from what I understand, is that when you snap that band, you should hurt yourself with it a few times. Now, some people need a tire tube, I'll admit. You mean they need a great big, rip their arm right off in order to make their changes. But essentially, you can snap that thing and make it sting. Whenever there's a pain like that or shock, the brain spews out some adrenaline.
Yes.
Okay? And whenever adrenaline is flowing in the body, the mind indelibilizes the affirmation more readily.
Really?
I have seen miracles performed with this. People who couldn't fly begin to fly. In a plane, I'm talking about now. Excuse me. People who couldn't go across bridges go across bridges, and people who stuttered who eventually didn't. We know this stuff works. So
whenever, for example, if I was afraid to cross a bridge, I would use the rubber band every time I thought and or said, I'm afraid.
Right.
Okay.
And it's so easy to slip back into that vernacular.
And I'd be using the blue dot maybe on the back of my hand
That's really putting it out there to see, isn't it?
to say something positive, like I cross bridges confidently with pleasure or something.
Let me say this. These people can get these blue dots at any, like supply store, office supply store. Buy a box of them, saturate your environment with them, and then if you would please, take them out into the public. Take them to the laundry, to the grocery store, put them on your bumper of your car, because someday I may want to slip by your neighborhood and you'll be helping me out. I'll put them out. In other words, I'll put mine out, you put yours out, and you put yours out, and we'll be assisting one another in a synergistic way. Can you imagine if we could saturate Sacramento with blue dots and have maybe 1,000, 2,000, 10,000, 100,000 people affirming for good, better, and best? It'd be a better city.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. We made a mark in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. It was funny. Everywhere I went in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, up where the Amish are.
Yes.
I did seminars up there for about a year, and for some reason this thing caught on, and everywhere I went I saw blue dots. In fact, they began to get out into Philadelphia and, surrounding areas, but we had a lot of fun with it. This thing is effective. We can't discount it. I think I mentioned prayer last week, didn't I?
Yes.
That's a form of affirmation.
Affirmation.
And we won't get back into the details of that as much because we have an awful lot to cover. But I did want to say that another way of doing this is through confirmations. Now, I want to make a correction this week because I was a little vague last week. As a matter of fact, I think I really pulled a boo-boo.
Uh-oh.
The difference between affirmation and confirmation is first party and second party. In other words, the analogy I used last week, if I said to you or to our viewing audience, I have a fine mind, I'm enthusiastic, I'm going places, I'm going to be successful, I'm very healthy, all of my facilities are working in good shape, except for right now for a sore throat.
Snap that rubber band.
Yeah, and I'm going to be successful and happy. That's an affirmation. It doesn't do much for you.
Right.
See what I'm saying?
It's first party towards, geared towards yourself.
A confirmation is where someone who matters says to you, you're wonderful. You're enthusiastic, you got a good mind, a bright future, and I know you're going places.
So can we ask people to give us confirmations?
That's what I was about to suggest. Please, find those people who care about you. And sometimes they try to protect us by getting in the way of our dream and say, look, confirm me. This is what I'm telling myself. Please tell me the same thing.
Right.
Like I don't know if I mentioned last week or not, but I didn't get confirmed much as a kid, but I do remember one time at the county fair, the guy behind the game booths said, hey kid, you look like a winner, come on over. Yeah, and then he took all my money.
Did you win?
No. He took all my money.
He didn't confirm you long enough.
And so we began to doubt the confirmations. Right. We began to challenge them. All I'm saying is get people to confirm us.
I think that there's we hear, well, I don't want to tell you that you're good because you might get a big head.
I was brought up on that idea, and so I ended up with no head.
Right.
I had to start off.
We all need a bigger head, don't you think?
Yeah, I had to start at 26 years old to rebuild it.
Right.
And that's not fair.
Or I'm just telling you how I feel about this. I don't think you can be successful in it. Instead of you can. Other people have done it.
Do it all the time.
What do they do?
Yeah.
How can we accomplish the things they've accomplished?
And by the way, you can't start this too young. I mean, a babe in arms can be confirmed over and over again. I do think that it has to be real. You can't tell someone they're doing a wonderful job when they're not. That's not fair, because then they get misdirected about it. You have to be candid, but whenever you can, you need to confirm, to elevate, enhance, and enrich someone else's mind and possibilities. Terribly important.
I think you can always look into someone, though, and find a quality that they have, even if it's somewhat latent, that you can confirm about them. You have the potential to. Maybe that comes back to the you could.
There is something we can do. Say, for example, no one in our lives will confirm us. Right. It really doesn't matter because we can do it ourselves with this technology.
That's true.
We can sit down and make a tape in our own voice confirming us. Now, those confirmations would be in concert with our affirmations, but they would be in second party. In other words, if I was going to make a confirmation tape, I would say, Bern, this is Bern, your alter ego, and I know something special about you, and then I would go on and confirm my affirmations, but in all second party. Everyone can have their own confirmation tape. These things work. I swear, there is one way we can enhance it too, though. As a matter of fact, if people want some of these, we probably need to start developing them for them. That is, on one side of the tape, you put Baroque music or nature sounds that tend to quiet the mind, all right? And underneath that sound, have the confirmation so that you have to listen for it. You know what I mean? So that you're really focused. On the other side of the tape, have the words dominant and the music underneath, and focus on the music. Always focus on the undertone. And between the two, same message on both sides, but those two drills can really, really make a difference.
Really? That's interesting.
There's some clear evidence that Baroque music or nature sounds do help the retentive ability of the mind. And so this certainly would be valid to work with.
Bern, I know that I mentioned at the beginning of the show that we were going to give a number for people to call if they wanted to get an audio tape of the show or some other information. Perhaps we could do that.
Let's put 1-800-661-3490. That's 1-800-661-3490. You may catch me live, or you may get a machine and just give us the data, and we need a name and an address and a phone number, and we will send you a audio cassette of this show or an improved one without the coughing on it. But the main thing is to get the information. The main thing is to get the information. Also, we'd like to hear from you. And so if you will call and this number and give us your address, well, we'll call back and give you our address, because it's too much to put on the air right now. But we'd sure like to hear from you and start reading these letters on the air and do whatever we can to assist people in really, really understanding this. There is some visual ways of proceeding with this process, but we're going to wait until the next show and continue
Wonderful.
it. I've got a lot of other things to share, too, that kind of certifies this kind of process and how effective it can be.
This material really excites me because I see it, again, as a way that people can work together to really enact change in their lives, families and friends and co-workers. I think if we were to take this with us to the workplace, we could really accomplish a lot.
Oh, I've seen dramatic changes in people's lives with this kind of stuff.
Bern, it looks like we're just about out of time. I hate to cut this short, but we can bring this up next week.
I guess we should remind people that my name is Bern and that the last name is
Moses.
And that I have to say thank you, Gina Fitt.
Thank you, Bern.